Welcome to Carolina Sculpture Studio. My name's Clint Button, and I'm a granite sculptor. Welcome to video number 76 of the Virtual Stone Carving Apprenticeship. Went ahead and laid out, drew up a pattern, made it out of chipboard, just cardboard, and laid it out on a piece of tin, roofing tin. You don't have to use this, but I like the galvanized because it won't rust. I've got, a whole bunch of patterns back there on the wall in the studio that we've made over the years, and you make it and you mark what it's for, and you have great ambitions that someday you'll need it again, and you probably won't. It'll just sit there and be cool to look at. I made two patterns. What we're going to do, one's going to be the finished pattern with a nice smooth arc the whole way. The other one is going to have, I'm going to relieve it near the top. I made this tang to hang over the top to sit on top of the stone so that it'll set square, and I'll probably put a piece of wood, plywood, whatever, a couple on each side, sort of like this, just so it's longer, so it'll sit and hold, and it won't fall off. I can set it on there and check it to where I can really look around it without moving the pattern. But one of them, because we haven't cut this top edge off yet, we're not going to do that till after we polish the top. One of these I will take and I will relieve it. I'll cut an extra loop out of it to go around to bypass this top extra material that we're going to leave on the stone. So we'll have one that we work with to do most of the work, and then one that is the finished pattern that we wrap up when we cut this after we polish the top. But I'll cut them both out, and then I'll put them together, whether I put a couple bolts, just a couple little holes through them, and then attach them so that I can finish this curve while they're ganged together, and that'll give me a more accurate pattern because the patterns will both be exactly the same. I can make them just the way I need, and so I'll cut them a little bit generous and make sure that they go this midpoint. Right about in here, this first line that we cut is a little high. It's a little out, which is great because if it was too deep, we'd have to go deeper. So we're going to hit that, and that's going to give us, we're just barely going to clear it when we start cutting this, and that'll clear it all up and be really nice. And we'll try to get a nice even belly or a nice even curve on this scotia drop wash. So I'm going to slay a few electrons right now and cut it out, and we'll be back after the basic stuff's done. Now that the two pieces are trimmed out, cut very carefully to make sure I got my registers here on the end right. And then if you look, you can see the discrepancy between them because I cut one and then I try to make sure the other one was cut even wider. And so now I'll just take a couple of files and make those lines match, and they'll be perfect. Put them in a vise, a little extra wood to support it. If it was wood was taller, it'd be even better, but this is fine. We'll just trim that off. It won't take a minute. And after just a few minutes of draw filing, let's see if this will focus. The edges are perfectly matched. All right, now let's put some wood on these and get to work. Here in the late day sun, we got a couple of pretty nice patterns. Okay, the difference between these patterns is that this one has been relieved at the top because we're going to use this one first where this isn't cut away. So this will accommodate for that, give me plenty of room. And then this one will, I'll probably write finish on this one, and we'll put that one aside so it's nowhere near the job. And we'll start working on this. But having this wood on here means that the pattern's set, and it's just it makes sense. It's easy to work with them, and it should register against here as we take this away. This will sink, and this should resolve the depth. I don't know how else to say it, but this right here will go over and fit, and we'll just work all this away. Now here on the back, I've been thinking. My sculptor always told me when you're not screwing around, you're trying to work, and something happens, something falls off, you know, like this where I cut on the wrong side of the line, and now I'm about 1/4 inch too deep. It happens for a reason. It was supposed to fall off. And so as I've been thinking and looking, I'm going to go ahead, as I cut this, it's on the back, I'm going to just sink this to fit this pattern so it matches all the way around. That'll sink this about 1/4 inch all the way around, and you know, this reference line as well will go in 1/4 inch. So what I'll do is I'll probably cut some reference lines, some points in here, and then push this line back, you know, like what we've been doing already. But this is that nasty corner. And going 1/4 inch deeper here and having a little bit of stone to break in will help eliminate some of this concave where it broke with that big inclusion. So it's more work on me. I made a mistake. It isn't fatal because I'm trying to make this top as big as we can, so we kind of cheated and we didn't go in as deep as we could on the ends or even front and back. So we still got plenty of stone. It isn't a detriment to the job. But once we push this in, I'll have another small shelf here, and then go right down with a chipper and just pop and pop it all off. And it'll help bring this volume out a little bit because it'll sink this line in about 1/4 inch. So, but these are nice patterns. Make good patterns. I'll label them, you know, for this project. The likelihood we'll use them again, small, you know, sometimes if you have something that you use a lot, you make even a heavier pattern than this. But this is just an easy way to make them. You know, we sandwich these up and just ran some sheetrock screws through there. You know, buy a bucket of them at the local box store when they're on discount because somebody smashed a bucket on the floor and there's a whole bunch of loose ones. Just, all you're gonna do is do models with them. So go for it. Nice patterns. All right, it's almost quitting time today. It's one of them days. Anxious to come in the morning and sit down and start doing some scotia work. We'll probably do the ends first. I'll leave the back for right now. We started on the back, but I'll start on the ends and get the ends wrapped up, and then we'll match the front to the ends, and then we'll come around here on the back, clear that back off. Cool deal. Before you start cutting stone, anytime you make a pattern in general, you got to make sure you measure it and you check it and you proof it and you double check it. You got to really be conscientious about it. Go through them and be real careful about trying to eliminate sharp edges and slivers. I still got a little tiny sliver in my finger, and I nicked it enough trying to get the sliver out. I don't want to bleed on the stone, so I just tape it up with tape. If you flip a piece of tape over so it doesn't stick wherever the injury is, that seems to be the best way to keep tape on when you're working, because a regular Band-Aid don't last any time at all with the pneumatic tools. But go through and check this really well. We know that this is going to be the register here, and we know that we've got a red line right here, and that'll go over and meet. And so I went through and have proofed it around the stone in a number of spots. And like right here, it's exactly 1 1/4 inches. And if you go up here and measure it, it's exactly 1 1/4 inches of material that has to go away for this to agree and for this to agree. Now, this is the finished pattern. It's not the one we're going to be using. So, and if you have to trim your pattern a little bit to make it work, make it work. You're the one with the opposable thumbs. You're supposed to be smarter than the stone. It doesn't always happen that way, but that's what's supposed to happen. But this should be okay. I made sure that any modifications I made to one pattern, I did to the other one in terms of this contour, or this scotia, this curve. Now this one, obviously, we can't measure that way as easily. There's a little nib right there that we can probably mark and transfer out, but this is clearanced away, so it shouldn't. But this pattern should still measure 1 1/4 inches out, because it's supposed to be a duplicate of this pattern. So we should be safe to start cutting these sides away, start producing this scotia. So we're going to get everything set up here. I'm going to start cutting. I'm going to cut these sides. I'll tip this edge in careful. You know, a lot of this will progress the way we've talked about it. I'll waste this away gradually. I'm not just going to hog into it and take a whole lot off all at once, because you tend to make mistakes. Go slow and do it right. Get into a rhythm, and what we'll do is we'll probably cut in a few references here, and then you can go a little bit faster by clearing out the gap between them. And the weather is almost nice enough that I could go ahead and polish this top and have it all done, so I didn't have to even use this pattern. But I'm going to do this to make sure we got everything put together right, and I don't trust the weather because we're still in the cold time of the year, and polishing when it's 35, 40 degrees in the studio isn't any fun. So let's start cutting stone, see how this goes. As I'm getting ready to cut this, I want to make a very, very important point. We're getting to important real estate, okay? We're going to start getting down to where we're doing finish work. And when you've got your tools, you need to be paying attention as to the length of your tool, the length of the usable tool, the length of your carbide. Now this carbide, I'll hang that over there, is getting really short. You can see where it's not very tall. And what's going to happen if I do a lot of muscle work with that is that those sides are going to break off, and maybe they'll just crack and stay there, and maybe they'll crack and the tool will advance the distance of the fracture. Okay, that could be a fatal mistake on something like this. We've done all this work to get to this point. So when you start getting down to where it's important, we're not just roughing off stone, you need to make sure that you trade out your short tools for one that has, you know, like basically, this is basically a new tool. The carbide is approximately that much longer. That's how much carbide there is on that tool. And so trade out your tools, get tools that are going to actually support the work. This is another one that's you know, not quite as short, but it's pretty short. If I start scraping and that fails and that breaks, you know, I can sharpen it a couple of times. It's going to be really short. Trade it out, get one with new carbide that's literally that much longer, and then you've got a tool that'll last a while. Buying this carbide that's a little bit longer and supporting it, you can get a little more value out of your tool per tool instead of having carbide that's real short. Some tools you buy will have really short carbide in them, and those are the tools that, you know, if you get an hour out of them when they're sharp all the time, that's all you get. But this is when you can't be cheap. You got to have good tools and to do good work. 9 points the same way. This 9 point's still really tall. I'm not worried about losing a corner and having it cause a failure. So trade your tools out, get good tools. Take these other tools and put them somewhere. I'll still use these for rough out work until they fail, but I'm going to do it where it's going to be okay if they fail. It's not going to cause a fracture or a loss, like I'll blow a corner off. When I start doing corners and stuff, that carbide better be long, nice and sharp. Okay, you've been warned. If you don't do this, you will have failures. Okay, put these away. Let's get to cutting stone. Let's take a look at where we're at right now. This is the nice thing about having the pattern with the top on it, is you can put it up against the stone. You can see the line that we cut is tall, which is great. So you got to sink that a little bit more. We'll go past that line just a little bit. This is still got to go in about a 1/4 inch, but a lot of these discrepancies, if you have to cut to the pattern and trust the pattern and stop overthinking it. Make the pattern fit and you'll have a consistent product. If you try to say, well, this is a 1/4 inch, I got to go a 1/4 inch deep here, and you automatically get a 1/4 inch. You know, if you're at a spot like this where it's not touching and you dig a 1/4 inch, you could be an 1/8 or more too deep. So you got to really follow the pattern. This is where you just sort of shut your mind off and go with it. And you have to trust it. And if this line varies a tiny bit, we may be just a little bit deeper here, you know, that's the way it goes, because we're not as it's not a precision thing. We've laid this out, we got it pretty accurate, but this face may not be as accurate as we'd like it to be. It's probably not as accurate as this big diamond saw top. Trust your pattern, follow your pattern, okay? And if you modify this pattern, modify the other one. Like we may have to trim that little lip right there off just to make this fit, because that's going to be higher than the line. But until we get there, we're not going to touch it. Trust your pattern. Now we'll work this middle line down and get that just right so it registers here. We should be pretty good. This is looking good. And after some trimming, just some work here on this scotia, we got a really good fit. Now, there's a small light gap right there, but see that it's even. It's even all the way down. And where it's touching is right here. Now, this wall is not perfectly plumb. This line was very accurate. This line was just arbitrarily put on. We'll let that panel run. I'll adjust this by truing up this panel to make it actually vertical, to match this template, so that we know we've got a 90 degree. I'll trim that up as we go on. That's why I didn't go nuts, because like right here, it's a little deeper, this sticks out. So we'll axis back, and that way when you look down on it, you'll have a nice straight edge. This comes good. I'll cut several more of these in here like this, and then we'll just rough the panel out, and then we'll do the final wash and get everything all axed together, just like we do every other panel. This is just panel work, people. Same thing as what we've been doing, except now it's more complicated. We're doing it somewhat out of position because we're doing a vertical face and we're doing a curve at the same time. So this is why you learn to do the boring stuff first, because then when you start doing this, it actually comes out good. We'll match this up. This has got a little bit of a, it went past both our reference lines, which is fine. That's not even, maybe that's a 1/4 inch. This one's not. But we got those reference lines, know that we're about a 1/4 inch past that all the way through, instead of guessing and thinking that we're okay and finding out it's got a big dig. We got to push it back and push it back and push it back until it all matches. That's going to be a pretty drop wash. A few lessons about patterns. You got to learn when to be, I don't know how the best way to put it. You got to know when to be autonomous and figure it all out and decide and make decisions. And then you got to figure out when you're just supposed to submit to what you know, what you've learned, and do it, and never question it. And you have to be able to step out. I always call it going, using it into my second mind, because there's training that you'll get if you do this the right way. You do what I'm showing you to do, okay? Don't try to invent it. Don't listen to whoever's got some new widget on the internet or whatever, and they got a better way of doing it with a soda bottle and it's a little bit of tin foil. No, this is how it works. Learn to do it this way, and then do it this way, and it will always turn out the same way. By using this pattern, I'm giving up my perspective on how curved and round this is. So it helps me produce a more consistent result, and that consistent result eliminates visual noise and makes a better looking product. Now, while I'm using this pattern, a couple of things about how to use the pattern. I've got to be really careful not to abrade this pattern on the stone and grind this here. I need to set it in place and touch it. Okay, I don't need to drag it back and forth to see, because it'll end up grinding this off. By the time I've gone, I got to go, if we just say this is 2 feet, 2, 4, and then 6, 6, that's what, 18 and 12. That's 8, 12, or 4 and 12. So, we got 16 feet we've got to do. We'll probably change this shape. We don't want to do that. I also have to look when I'm putting it on the stone. I want it to be clean, no grit, and I want to make sure that when this goes on the stone, that it's agreeing with the stone, because what will happen on little points like this corner right here on the bottom is that this will go in, and if this isn't cut down enough, we don't want to cut it down too much because we want a good fit, but if it isn't cut down enough, it will ramp and it will lift this whole pattern up, and it's very easy for it to lift it up, you know, a small amount, relatively small amount. You'll cut that scotia in the wrong place, and then you come back and it doesn't match. In the end, we're going to go over and hand axe this whole thing to even everything up anyways, to make sure that we've got no witness lines left from producing this. But you've got to use your pattern carefully and not make sure that, you know, while you start putting it in, watch how it's touching the stone, watch the register, and try to make sure that you don't clean or wear that corner off, because by the time you've done all this real estate, it will wear off. So I'm getting, you know, pretty good. I got to do a little bit more here, and then we'll have to sink that just a little bit more to get that bottom in. But trust your training. Learn how to do it right, and then just do it that way, and don't overthink it, because you'll overthink it and then you'll make a mistake. Do it the right way. I don't want to say without thinking about it, but learn to trust. You know what's right, you know what works. Learn to trust that and just shut off your brain and do that, and you'll end up with a lot better result. Back to cut. What I'm going to do is I'm going to keep doing this. Split it in half, take the sides, you know, the two islands, and clean them off, and axe across it. I'm not going to go crazy axing this to perfection until I get all four sides done, because what'll happen, you'll be working away, boop, and you'll have a piece of stone pop off somewhere. And you've already spent all these hours axing it to perfection, and now you got a little error you've got to fix. So we're going to get everything put together and everything almost finished, and then once everything's done and all our edges are secure and we don't have any problems, we don't have to move anything, then we'll do a final wash and axe everything at the end. But I'll just scrape this to get rid of these witness lines, just to get it even and clean this bottom up, I'll just keep going, and I'll skip over here, do one right here, break it in half, do those, just keep doing that. We'll wind this whole side up. When you're tipping the edge to bevel it down to this line, get used to using your tool not at 90 degrees but on a bias. You go one way and then go the other way. You'll have better support and you'll be less likely to make a dig, because if you take a little bit off and then you reverse it to go 90 degrees on those lines, you can take that surface down really even. If you I'll use this one just as an example, it's easier to see. If you go straight on here and try to erode down, it's really easy to get into a hole and start to dig that hole deeper. You don't want it. You can still tip it. It still works better to erode those tops off and take the cross action, just like when we axe stuff. Same stuff we've been showing you all along. Tip it. Do it on a 45 and then do an opposite. And it'll help erode that line down a lot better. Then once you get it down enough, we cut behind here. I'm pushing this back, I'll have this top, and it makes it real easy to take it off. This will fracture as opposed to pushing the energy down here to making that edge. If you happen to have any bush chisels, actual real bush chisels, or you make some, they're not hard to make. I spend a lot of time supporting on this bolt while I'm holding that tool. When I'm working it, I'll actually be holding that tool against that bolt to support as opposed to squeezing it, okay? Back to work. By doing this skip approach, or I'll skip approach, I'll skip ahead, you know, the tool width or whatever. And then I'll cut this. I can use the pattern here, and I can use the pattern here, and I eliminate roughly 50% of the side of having to check it exhaustively with the pattern, because I got a good surface here and a good surface here, and I can just clean between them. And this will speed you up when you're working using pattern. Same thing when you're flattening a panel with plumb blocks. Same thing. You set up a line by it, and then you can clear what's behind between them. Then at the end we'll go over and wash it so you can't see little shadows or witness of where those lines were. Okay, so it's important to make sure that your tools are not cocked where you dig one side low and the other side high. You want to learn to stay straight on and make a good contact. And then if you've got a good flat plane here and a good flat plane here that are roughly in the same plane or just a little bit high on the edges, it's easy to just rough this off and axe it, and you're all done. That's it for that side. We'll do the ends in conjunction to corners. We'll do those when we do the opposite side so we can develop it together. What's apt to happen if you have any shift at all in what you're doing, and theoretically if you're going by the pattern you're accurate, you shouldn't have any shift, but we want this miter down the edge. Back here we're going to take off a 1/4 inch and sink it. But we want this miter, when we develop it, to be really nice and not wander at all. And so we should really cut everything all together at once so that the sides come out and we make the sides marry properly. And that should start with our top corner. We should have our top corner probably after this is polished. have that top corner to have that miter go right down and have a perfect ending on each corner. So it looks good, and that's just, you know, you can go ahead and cut them right now. I mean, I cut them right now and they should still come out great because I'm going by the pattern, but I'd rather do them simultaneously with the opposite side to make sure that everything agrees, so that I have a miter that's perfect and not one that wanders. But I'll go ahead and do the other end and do the front, and probably will come back when we're working on this back and get this back straightened out. My name's Clint Button. I'm a granite sculptor here at Carolina Sculptor Studio with the Virtual Stone Carving Apprenticeship. Thanks for coming in.